Lucas Kane stepped off the diplomatic shuttle with an air of calm confidence, his tailored suit stark against the vibrant hues of the Galactic Empire's capital. The Imperial guards lining the grand atrium barely glanced at him. To them, he was just another representative from an insignificant world, a human from Earth, a species they considered barely worth acknowledging. Kane knew better than to let their disdain bother him. He had come to negotiate, not to make friends. Inside the Imperial Senate chamber, Kane's presence caused a murmur among the delegates. He stood tall before the assembly, his gaze steady as he prepared to address the council. His voice, measured and calm, carried across the room as he laid out Earth's case for the release of the exploration vessel detained by the Empire. Every word was precise, his tone both humble and assertive, balancing diplomacy with an underlying sense of strength. The senators, a mix of alien species, reacted with varying degrees of amusement and irritation. Some chuckled openly, while others leaned back with smug expressions, waiting for the human to falter. Among them sat Admiral Tavries, a cold-blooded strategist whose contempt for Kane was palpable. To Tavries, this human diplomat was nothing more than a distraction, a nuisance delaying the inevitable subjugation of Earth. Unbeknownst to Kane, an Imperial officer stationed near the chamber entrance was carefully scanning his credentials. The device in his hands beeped faintly, the sound drowned out by the chamber's hum of discontent. The officer's eyes widened as the data loaded onto his screen. The name Lucas Kane was meaningless to him, but the bounty attached to an alternative identity, *Shadowblade*, was not. A galaxy-wide alert flagged the diplomat as the most wanted assassin in recent history. Quietly, the officer stepped away to alert security. As Kane concluded his plea, the chamber erupted in dismissive jeers. "Your words are futile, human," Admiral Tavries said, his voice laced with derision. "Earth's position in this galaxy is tenuous at best. Perhaps this incident will remind you of your place." The assembly's laughter echoed as Kane met Tavries' gaze, his expression unchanging. "Earth's strength is not in its size or position, Admiral," Kane replied evenly. "It is in its ability to adapt. Underestimating us has been a mistake before. I would caution against repeating it." Before Tavries could respond, the chamber doors swung open with a sharp hiss. A squad of armored guards marched in, their weapons aimed squarely at Kane. "Lucas Kane, you are under arrest," their leader announced. The room fell silent, confusion spreading among the delegates. Kane raised his hands in compliance, his expression unreadable. "This is outrageous." Kane protested with a carefully measured tone of indignation. "On what grounds am I being detained?" The guards ignored him, gripping his arms tightly as they pulled him away from the podium. Tavries watched the scene unfold with narrowed eyes, suspicion flickering across his face. "Diplomatic immunity will not protect you this time, human," the lead guard muttered under his breath. Kane offered no resistance, allowing himself to be escorted out of the chamber. As they moved through the hallways of the Imperial facility, Kane's demeanor shifted subtly. The tension in his shoulders eased, and the faintest hint of a smile played on his lips. The guards didn't notice, too focused on their orders to process the change. Kane's thoughts, however, were anything but relaxed. He was already calculating, analyzing the situation, and piecing together the events that had led to his arrest. The trip to the detention facility was short but suffocatingly silent. The guards avoided eye contact, their body language betraying unease. It wasn't fear of Kane, they still saw him as a harmless diplomat, but something about the arrest felt unusual, even to them. Kane noted every detail, storing the information for later use. The detention center was as grim as he expected, its corridors lined with cells holding the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. As the guards escorted him deeper into the facility, the jeering began. Alien inmates pressed against the force fields of their cells, shouting obscenities and taunts. "Fresh meat," one yelled, his jagged teeth bared in a predatory grin. The guards shoved Kane into a holding cell, locking the door with a loud click. He sat on the cold bench, his eyes scanning the room. The cell was sparse, its walls covered in faint scorch marks from previous occupants' escape attempts. Kane leaned back, his mind already working through the puzzle. The Empire's interest in him wasn't coincidental, and he intended to find out exactly what they knew. Hours passed before the cell door opened again. A high-ranking officer, flanked by 2 guards, stepped inside. His uniform was immaculate, and his expression carried the arrogance typical of Imperial officials. "Lucas Kane," he began, his voice dripping with condescension. "Or should I say, Shadowblade?" Kane's expression didn't falter, but his mind raced. The Empire knew. The identity he had buried, the life he had left behind, it had somehow resurfaced. But he kept his composure, meeting the officer's gaze with a calm intensity. "You seem to be mistaken," he replied smoothly. "I'm a diplomat, nothing more." The officer smirked, leaning closer. "Oh, we'll see about that. The galaxy has been hunting you for years, and now, thanks to your little diplomatic mission, we've finally got you." He turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. "Enjoy your stay, Shadowblade. You won't be leaving anytime soon." As the door slammed shut, Kane allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The Empire had underestimated him in the Senate, and now they were doing it again. The diplomat they thought they had captured was gone, replaced by the assassin they had awakened. For now, he would play their game. But the Empire's mistake would soon become clear. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. The first hours in the prison were nothing short of a test, not just of endurance but of adaptability. Lucas Kane, the supposed diplomat, sat quietly on the cold bench of his cell, his mind sharper than ever. The environment was hostile, almost deliberately designed to crush the spirit of anyone trapped within. Alien prisoners of varying species jostled against the force field barriers of their cells, their taunts and jeers aimed at the soft human who had been thrown among them. They saw him as an easy target, a diplomatic pawn unprepared for the realities of a place where strength and cunning ruled. Kane ignored them, letting the noise wash over him. His eyes methodically scanned the details of the detention facility, the placement of the cameras, the timing of the guards' patrols, and the locations of the control panels. Every detail was a piece of the larger puzzle he would need to solve. While others shouted threats or exchanged barbs, Kane sat silently, his hands clasped loosely in his lap. He knew better than to let bravado dictate his actions. In this place, survival was about precision, not posturing. The first test came sooner than expected. A group of prisoners, led by a towering, reptilian thug, managed to disable the force field of their cell and approached Kane's. The guards barely glanced up, amused by the prospect of the diplomat getting a rude awakening. The reptilian leader sneered as he stepped into Kane's cell, towering over the seated man. The room fell silent as inmates and guards alike waited for the inevitable violence. Kane moved before the first blow could land. His years as Shadowblade had honed his instincts to perfection, and the diplomat's facade melted away in an instant. He sidestepped the reptilian's lumbering swing, delivering a precise strike to a vulnerable nerve cluster on its side. The massive creature crumpled to the floor, howling in pain. Kane didn't stop there. He used the reptilian's bulk as a shield against the other attackers, dispatching them with brutal efficiency. The onlookers were stunned. Inmates who had mocked him now whispered among themselves, their fear palpable. The guards exchanged uneasy glances, suddenly realizing that the diplomat might not be as defenseless as they'd assumed. Kane straightened his jacket and calmly returned to his seat, as if nothing had happened. He didn't need to threaten or boast, the message was clear enough. He was not someone to be trifled with. Word of the incident spread quickly, and soon Kane was approached by Zerkith, an alien crime lord who effectively ruled the prison's underworld. Zerkith was no fool, he recognized power when he saw it. The crime lord offered Kane an alliance, a mutually beneficial arrangement that would ensure his safety in exchange for his cooperation. Kane, knowing the value of allies in a place like this, agreed, but only on his terms. He didn't plan to stay in this prison long, and Zerkith's resources could prove invaluable. Through Zerkith, Kane began gathering intelligence about the prison's layout and operations. He learned about the corrupt warden who ran the facility like a personal fiefdom, profiting from backroom deals with syndicates and imperial officers alike. He also discovered whispers of a hidden archive within the prison, a place where the Empire stored classified information too sensitive for their central databases. The archive's existence intrigued him, especially when he learned that its security measures were designed to keep even the most determined hackers and infiltrators out. While Kane worked to secure information, he reflected on the decisions that had brought him here. Memories of his past life as Shadowblade resurfaced unbidden, each one sharper and darker than the last. He had been a ghost, an assassin who moved unseen through the galaxy, leaving only bodies and whispers in his wake. Yet, he had grown tired of the endless cycle of violence, the constant chase that offered no peace. Becoming a diplomat had been a chance to rewrite his story, to protect humanity through dialogue instead of destruction. But now, faced with the Empire's corruption and the looming threat to Earth, Kane realized he couldn't afford to be the diplomat anymore. This wasn't a battlefield for words, it was a game of survival, and the only way to win was to embrace the shadowy side of himself that he had tried to bury. His first step toward escape began with a calculated gamble. Using the information Zerketh provided, Kane orchestrated a small riot in one wing of the prison, diverting the guards' attention long enough to access the control hub. Under the guise of chaos, he infiltrated the hub and downloaded schematics of the facility, including the location of the hidden archive. The operation was precise and left no trace, a testament to the skills he had once used to eliminate high-profile targets. Returning to his cell, Kane began formulating a plan to access the archive. It wouldn't be easy, the security protocols were extensive, and the warden had deliberately placed the archive in a heavily fortified section of the prison. But Kane thrived on challenges, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The whispers he had heard suggested that the archive contained plans for an Imperial fleet capable of annihilating entire planets. If those plans included Earth, then his mission was no longer just about survival. It was about stopping the Empire before they could strike. As he pieced together his strategy, Kane couldn't ignore the growing tension within the prison. The guards were becoming more aggressive, clearly on edge after the riot. Syndicate operatives within the facility were moving suspiciously, their eyes frequently darting toward Kane. Zerketh warned him of a possible bounty placed on his head, a sign that someone outside the prison had taken an interest in his capture, or his elimination. Kane welcomed the challenge. The Empire, the syndicates, the Warden, they were all underestimating him, just as they had in the past. What they didn't realize was that Lucas Kane wasn't trapped with them. They were trapped with him. And when the time came, he would remind them why Shadowblade was a name spoken in fear. The prison's hidden archive was more than a place of secrets, it was the heart of the Empire's most dangerous plans. Lucas Kane's calm facade concealed a storm of calculated intent as he made his next move. The riot he had orchestrated earlier served its purpose, sowing distrust between the guards and the prisoners. In the chaos, alliances shifted, and Kane used the confusion to solidify his hold over the prison's underworld. Zerketh provided the resources he needed: distraction, leverage, and crucial access codes stolen from corrupt guards. Kane moved swiftly, his actions deliberate and methodical. He had mapped out the archive's location during his infiltration of the control hub. It was nestled deep within the facility, protected by an array of automated defenses and patrolled by elite guards who operated outside the Warden's authority. Breaking into the archive required more than brute force, it demanded finesse, timing, and a level of expertise the Empire hadn't accounted for. What they didn't realize was that their most wanted assassin was in their midst, and he thrived on impossible odds. As the prison settled into its uneasy rhythm, Kane struck. Using a forged clearance chip smuggled to him by Zerketh's network, he bypassed the first layer of security. The corridors leading to the archive were silent, save for the hum of the facility's power systems. Surveillance cameras swept the halls in precise intervals, their movements predictable but relentless. Kane's training kicked in, his body moving with the practiced precision of someone who had spent years operating in the galaxy's deadliest shadows. Inside the archive, Kane's suspicions were confirmed. Rows of secure data modules lined the walls, each containing information that could topple empires or ignite wars. The room itself was sterile, its cold metallic surfaces gleaming under the stark lighting. Kane didn't waste time marveling at the Empire's paranoia. He focused on finding the specific module tied to the fleet schematics. It took him minutes to locate it, his practiced hands bypassing the encryption protocols with ease. What he uncovered sent a chill through him. The Empire wasn't just building a fleet, they were constructing a weaponized armada designed to enforce absolute dominance over the galaxy. At the heart of the fleet's strategy was Earth. The Empire viewed humanity's resilience and rapid advancement as a threat, and their plan was to eliminate that threat before it could grow. The schematics included not just the designs for the fleet but also detailed simulations of their intended strike against Earth's major cities. Kane's mind raced. He couldn't allow this information to remain buried. Humanity needed to know what the Empire had planned, and he would ensure that it did. But his mission wasn't just about exposing the Empire, it was about dismantling their ability to act. Kane uploaded a copy of the schematics to a secure transmitter, setting it to broadcast to an encrypted human relay once he reached a safe distance. The return trip from the archive wasn't as smooth as the entry. The warden had grown suspicious of the recent disturbances and had increased security throughout the facility. Guards patrolled in pairs, and checkpoints had been reinforced. Kane's exit was nearly compromised when a passing patrol caught sight of him. He neutralized them quickly but knew their absence would be noticed soon. Time was running out. Meanwhile, in the warden's office, the situation was spiraling. The warden, a shrewd but greedy official, had been informed of Kane's actions by a spy within Zerkatha's network. Recognizing the potential value of Kane, not as a prisoner but as a bargaining chip, the warden contacted one of the galaxy's most powerful crime syndicates. The syndicate had long sought Shadowblade and was willing to pay a fortune for his capture. Arrangements were made, and the syndicate dispatched a team of elite assassins to retrieve him. The assassins' arrival plunged the prison into chaos. Their sudden infiltration disrupted the already fragile order, sparking confrontations between guards, prisoners, and syndicate operatives. The facility, designed to contain threats, now became a war zone. Kane, moving through the chaos, used the distractions to his advantage. Every explosion, every clash, was an opportunity to slip through the cracks of the Empire's defenses. Kane's path intersected with Zerkath, who had his own plans to escape amidst the turmoil. The crime lord, ever opportunistic, suggested they join forces for mutual benefit. Kane agreed, but his terms were clear. Zerkath would provide a diversion to keep the assassins occupied while Kane made his way to the prison's main communications hub. There, he could transmit the stolen data and sabotage the facility's systems to cover his escape. The plan unfolded with ruthless efficiency. Zerkath and his followers launched a coordinated assault on the assassins, drawing them into a prolonged firefight that left the prison's remaining guards scrambling to regain control. Kane reached the communications hub, his movements unrelenting as he hacked into the system. The transmission was sent, the encrypted signal racing through the galaxy toward its intended destination. Before leaving, Kane ensured the Empire would pay for their arrogance. Using the prison's own systems, he triggered a cascading failure in the facility's power grid. Alarms blared as containment fields failed and automated defenses turned on their operators. The prison descended into complete anarchy, its structure buckling under the strain of system overloads and internal explosions. As the chaos reached its peak, Kane slipped out in the confusion, blending into the flood of escaping prisoners and fleeing guards. His actions had left the Empire reeling, their plans exposed and their facility in ruins. But Kane knew this was only the beginning. The fleet was still operational, and Earth was still a target. The Empire's mistake wasn't just in underestimating him, it was in assuming they could control the storm they had unleashed. Kane disappeared into the shadows once more, leaving the Empire to grapple with the consequences of their arrogance. But he wasn't running. He was planning, preparing for the next step. For Lucas Kane, the mission wasn't over until Earth was safe, and the Empire understood the price of underestimating humanity. The Empire's fleet base was a fortress of unmatched scale, orbiting a barren planet on the fringes of the galaxy. Its purpose was clear: serve as the launching point for the Empire's dominance, with Earth as the first target. Lucas Kane, now free from the prison and armed with the stolen schematics, approached it with the precision of a predator. His plan wasn't just to disrupt, it was to dismantle the Empire's ability to strike and ensure humanity's survival. The fleet itself was an awe-inspiring display of power, rows of sleek, heavily armed warships capable of devastating entire planets. It was a statement of the Empire's absolute authority, but to Kane, it was a challenge. The security surrounding the base was tight, but Kane had the advantage of surprise. The Empire still believed he was contained, a false assumption that left them vulnerable. Using the intelligence from the schematics, Kane infiltrated the outer perimeter of the base undetected. His movements were deliberate, blending with the shadows of the vast infrastructure. The schematics had revealed critical vulnerabilities in the base's systems, overlooked redundancies and gaps in the automated defenses. To the Empire, it was an impenetrable fortress. To Kane, it was a puzzle waiting to be solved. He began by targeting the command hub, a sprawling complex at the heart of the station. Inside, the Empire's officers coordinated fleet operations and maintained the base's defenses. Kane moved silently, dispatching guards with surgical precision and avoiding unnecessary confrontations. His objective wasn't to leave a trail of destruction, it was to cripple the Empire's ability to retaliate. In the command hub, he accessed the fleet's operational network, bypassing layers of encryption with the ease of someone who had spent years mastering systems far more secure. The schematics he had stolen gave him full access to the fleet's control protocols. With a few keystrokes, he uploaded a virus designed to corrupt navigation systems, disable weapon targeting, and overload power cores. The virus was programmed to spread silently, lying dormant until Kane activated it remotely. As Kane worked, an alarm sounded across the base. His infiltration had been detected, though they still didn't know the full extent of the threat. The Empire's response was swift, with squads of elite soldiers sweeping through the corridors. Kane anticipated their movements, using the labyrinthine layout of the base to stay one step ahead. He planted timed explosives at critical junctures, creating diversions that drew attention away from his true objectives. The base descended into chaos as the virus began its initial activation, causing glitches in the fleet's systems. Warships reported unexpected malfunctions, and the command hub was flooded with error messages. The officers struggled to contain the situation, unaware that it was only the beginning. Kane's strategy wasn't just to destroy the fleet, it was to sow confusion and fear, to make the Empire question their own invincibility. Kane's next target was the station's communications array, the Empire's link to the rest of their forces. Destroying it would isolate the base, ensuring that no reinforcements could be summoned. As he approached the array, he encountered heavier resistance, guards equipped with advanced weaponry and supported by combat drones. The confrontation was inevitable, and Kane faced it head-on. His movements were a blur of precision, each strike calculated to neutralize the threat quickly and efficiently. The drones posed a greater challenge, but Kane used their predictability against them, luring them into crossfire and exploiting their programming flaws. The destruction of the communications array was swift and absolute. Explosions lit up the station as Kane's charges detonated, severing the base's connection to the outside world. The Empire's officers, now fully aware of the sabotage, scrambled to regain control. But the virus had taken hold, spreading to every system and rendering their efforts futile. With the base in disarray, Kane made his way to the central control room. This was the heart of the station, the place where final decisions were made and where the Empire's arrogance was most evident. The room was filled with holographic displays of the fleet, charts of planned invasions, and data on potential threats, Earth at the center of it all. An imposing figure awaited him there, Admiral Tavries, the architect of the Empire's campaign against humanity. Tavries stood confident, flanked by heavily armed guards. "So, the diplomat reveals his true nature," Tavries sneered. Shadowblade, the galaxy's most wanted assassin, reduced to defending a pathetic species. Kane didn't respond immediately, his gaze fixed on the Admiral. "You've made two mistakes," Kane said finally, his voice cold and unwavering. "Underestimating humanity, and underestimating me." The fight that followed was brutal and swift. Kane's calculated movements clashed against the guard's disciplined training, but his years of experience gave him the edge. One by one, the guards fell, leaving Tavries alone. The Admiral, for all his bluster, was no match for Kane. Their confrontation ended with Tavries incapacitated, his arrogance replaced with fear. Kane accessed the central control console, activating the final phase of his plan. The virus reached its peak, triggering a chain reaction across the fleet. Engines overloaded, weapons malfunctioned, and power cores destabilized. The warships, symbols of the Empire's might, became their undoing. One by one, they exploded in a cascade of destruction, the fire illuminating the void of space. Before leaving, Kane activated the station's self-destruct sequence, ensuring that no trace of the Empire's plans would survive. As alarms blared and the structure began to collapse, Kane made his escape in a stolen shuttle. He transmitted a final message to the Empire, his voice calm yet filled with unshakable resolve. To the Galactic Empire, humanity will not bow, and your arrogance will be your downfall. This is just the beginning. Kane's shuttle disappeared into the darkness as the station erupted in a final, cataclysmic explosion. The fleet was gone, Earth was safe, and the Empire was left reeling. But Kane knew his fight wasn't over. The galaxy was vast, and the Empire's reach extended far beyond this one base. Yet, for the first time, the balance of power had shifted, and humanity had proven it was a force to be reckoned with.